Hello, everyone, and welcome to this 29th episode of 5 Minutes with NY Ike. I am Isaac Sacolick, or NY Ike on Twitter, and in this episode, I'm continuing on the series around how to find force multipliers that accelerate digital transformation. In this episode, we're going to focus on agile processes and what is about an agile process and what you need to have in it to really create a force multiplier in your organization and accelerate the delivery of transformation. Let's get started. Now, if you go back and watch episode 28, I speak a lot about what a force multiplier is. So I'm not going to repeat that, but this is what the picture looks like. People collaborating together, using their skills, their knowledge, and their technologies in order to create some kind of accelerant in growth. Now, when you look at your standard Scrum process and you look at, the ability to do commitments, stand-ups, demos, and reviews at the end of a sprint, what makes this really effective is that it takes teams, they prioritize at the beginning of their sprint, they create tunnel vision in terms of what they're trying to execute on, and they work together day to day to get through impediments and make sure they deliver at the end of the sprint. There are two aspects of a standard Scrum process that really create the accelerant, right? One is the ability to plan. When you look at standard Scrum, it does not give you a whole lot of guidelines in terms of how to go about planning. And so we're going to talk about that in terms of how you create backlogs, how do you create roadmaps and standards so that you can actually get an accelerant in what you're delivering. The other area where most teams can find an accelerant is in their retrospectives. This is just a standard practice where the teams get together, understand how they performed over the last sprint, and discuss technology, process, and data improvements that will enable them to execute better in the next sprint, right? So that in itself, because you're doing that every single sprint, that in itself creates an accelerant. But for the organization StarCIO helps with in their agile planning and processes, it's really the planning process that can create a force multiplier in transformation programs. So in the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. So yay, we're agile, but now we need to accelerate. We need to do more. We want to increase our velocity. We want to collaborate better as a team. What is it about planning that enables that? So let's take two different views of this. Now, those of you who have seen other episodes of this 5 Minutes with NY Ike or have looked at my blog, blogs.starcio.com, you may have seen previous versions of these images, but let me explain them in totality. On the left side, you're really getting a top-down view of what leadership wants from an agile program. Folks in product management, stakeholders, executives are all looking for roadmaps so that they get some sense of visibility of where the trains are going. You have architects and CIOs and technology leaders that don't just want to execute on a sprint and release basis. They want to make sure that there are standards in place in terms of how teams are executing so that there isn't an introduction or an over-introduction of technical debt and defects in the development process. Those leading teams, people like Scrum Masters and others that are involved in making sure that teams are executing well, want to make sure that teams are happy, that they're not overworked, that they're learning every single sprint. And then finally, those in operations want to make sure that releases are reliable, that testing is being practiced, that there's a shift left mentality when it comes to security. So that's the top-down view when you think about what executives, leaders, managers want out of a agile program. Now, how do you get there? It really comes down to looking at the macro picture of where agile fits in. And what you're seeing that is on the right-hand side, where you are not just delivering every sprint, but you're also planning every sprint. Your backlog is being filled with new features, new stories, new defects that are not only getting requirements, but they're also being estimated so that teams have a better decision in terms of what they're working on. When we do deployments, we're introducing DevOps principles in terms of being able to test in the pipelines and release frequently. And most importantly, we're introducing feedback and monitoring frequently so that when we learn something from our end users, from our customers, from our systems, we're feeding that back into our development process so that we can continuously prioritize what's really important. So this is a in-team planning, delivery, deploy, and monitoring and feedback process. And that's what StarCIO calls the overall release management process. When you put this all together, here's how you get a force multiplier. It starts off with the fact that you actually have true multidisciplinary teams between business, technologists, and if you're working on data products with data scientists, data ops engineers, and in data governance. You're not only just focusing on delivering, which is what traditional Scrum focuses on, but you're also introducing planning as a continuous process in what you're doing. Inside there, you're not just looking at getting things done, you're introducing and following standards. And lastly, we're using estimating to feed information back up into our planning process so we make better decisions on what we prioritize, and then later to give feedback to executives in terms of your roadmaps. Now, I outline a lot of this in my white paper, starcio.com/agile planning. You'll get a copy of that. I do have 3 courses around this that are available online, and I do workshops on this on a regular basis. So thank you for watching this week's episode of 5 Minutes with NY Ike. We're going to continue down this program over the next couple of episodes on talking about how to introduce force multipliers in your transformation programs. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Have a great day.